Welcome to the Informed Pregnancy and Parenting Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Elliot Berlin, and I'm here with today's co-host, Angelica Ortiz. She is the Informed Pregnancy researcher, writer, and producer, and she's finishing her chiropractic studies, almost done.
Yeah, really close.
And specializing in pre- and postnatal care. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Our guests today are Lilit Sarkissian. She's a labor and delivery nurse and childbirth educator, completing her studies at Frontier Nursing University to become a certified nurse midwife. What a journey.
Finally.
How long has the program been?
Oh, the program's only 3 years, but I've been wanting to do that since I was 9.
Oh, wow.
So.
I want to find out more about that shortly. Because to me, labor and delivery nurses are like the heroes, the unsung heroes of childbirth. And you know so much, and you do so much.
Yes.
I think especially before people have their first baby, they assume their doctor's going to do everything. But they don't. It's you guys. So, and today we're going to talk about a specific type of labor that goes very quickly. Mm-hmm. And the ones who are normally tasked with figuring out where we are in labor are the labor and delivery nurses. So you have some good intel, and we want it. Mm-hmm. Our other guest today is Anisimova Schafer. And did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Oh, perfect.
Perfect.
And you are a wife, you are a mom, you are a model and actor. And I'm really excited for your first leading role. The film is called Elizabeth Blue, and it's about a young schizophrenic woman planning her wedding. That has got to be difficult to play.
Yeah.
Yes,
since
it was.
You are not schizophrenic.
Yeah, it was very challenging. But the writer-director is schizophrenic, so I got to really sort of see it firsthand and use him as my inspiration.
Oh, wow. That's an incredible way to get ready for a role.
Yeah.
I only saw so far the trailer, and I'm already glued. So I can't wait to see it. Thank you for joining us. You've been on the podcast before.
I have.
You're on the episode called The Pregnancy Taboos. It's one of our earlier episodes, and it's still up there, and it's one of the most popular episodes. We had Dr. Jay Goldberg of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, and we sort of threw at him all these different questions about things that you're supposedly not allowed to do, not allowed to touch, eat, drink, think about while you are pregnant, and he addressed each one and gave his general mellow, calm thoughts about it. So it's a very popular episode. We didn't think you were going to make it because we invited you to be a guest, but it was sort of around the time you were due. And
Yeah, I was 3 days past my due date at that podcast. I was very big and very uncomfortable.
And you were already sort of dilating, so we thought there's no way you're going to make it, no problem. But then the morning of, you're like, hey, I'm still here, so and I'm bored. So you came on down, and we tried to entertain you. But instead, you sort of entertained us because you told us all the different things you were trying to get the baby out of you. And I was like, do you remember some of the things you tried?
Oh, boy. Yeah. I drank that tea that you told me to drink.
The red raspberry leaf?
By the Like, it was ridiculous how much tea I drank.
Just to know, that's more of a tonic to strengthen your uterus so that when labor begins, it's, like, effective.
But there are all these articles that say that it actually helps induce labor as well. So I really tried that.
Okay. Buckets of red raspberry.
Yeah. My husband and I got it on.
I could tell, yes.
A lot.
Was that difficult at the end of pregnancy?
Yes, because you're
It's not easy.
huge and you're
Yeah.
tired and everything hurts and you just want the baby out. So it's like the last thing I wanted to do. But I was like, wait, I heard this works. Like, we have to do this.
And you said that wasn't working.
That wasn't working. I walked 5 miles every day. I did squats. My mom called me. She's Russian. She's like, I moved furniture and that's how you came. And I was like, okay, I moved some furniture. That didn't work.
Really?
It was nasty.
Let me ask you a question. Did she just need some furniture moved? Or
Maybe she didn't like where my couch was. I don't know.
Feng
But
shui.
nothing really worked. And I think what I learned from that process is the baby will come when the baby's ready. Mm-hmm. Like, you just have to kind of. And I also learned that during labor. Like, it, as we'll get into, but
yeah, because during the podcast, Pregnancy Taboos, you were just saying that didn't work, and that didn't work, and that didn't work, and your doctor happened to be Dr. Jay Goldberg, who was our guest, and I was scheduled to come to your birth and do something, and I was there as well. So you could have just had the baby in the studio. And in fact,
I should have.
You should have.
I think we might even play this clip back, but occasionally you get up and you're just walking around grunting.
You can also tell she's a very happy person most of the time, and look at her now. So something's going on.
Something's happening.
This is for real.
And we're all talking about, so can you do your nails? Can you get your hair dyed? And, all the different pregnancy. Can you eat deli meats? And occasionally we just hear you walking around doing little grunts.
Because I was so uncomfortable. I wasn't really feeling anything. I was just, my back was killing me and I was just hot.
Yeah.
And my stomach was weirdly to the side.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, it was just completely, it looked so strange, but it was fully to the side and it was just uncomfortable.
Well.
And who was the other? There was a doula there.
Oh, yeah, I think Maria.
She kept rubbing my ankle and pressing on that pressure point. She's like, this will help you. Guess what?
Guess what?
It did.
Yeah, because the next time I heard from you, I think it was a text message saying had the baby. And it was only a couple hours after we left the studio. So what happened when we left?
Okay, so
Let's just say this: you had a quick birth, and what I want to talk about today on the podcast is called Precipitous Labor, where your baby just comes out very quickly under a few hours. And most people, first-time moms, when I ask them, "What do you want from your birth?" they always say, "I want a quick labor. I just want it quick." And then women who have really quick labor actually say that was way too quick. So let's hear how yours went.
So we left the podcast at 8:30
PM.
p.m.
Okay.
I am so happy I wasn't driving because about 20 minutes into my drive home, two things happened, and it was very strange. We were driving, and all of a sudden I saw a lot of helicopters and lights and police cars. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And as I see this man basically raise his hands covered in blood with police people pointing guns at him, as I'm seeing this, and maybe that's what induced I don't know, maybe the shock and anxiety of it. But as I'm seeing this, another thing happens. And I feel a lot of pain. And I sort of grab onto the seat of the car. And I close my eyes and I'm like, oh! And so the guy that was driving me, he looks over and he's like, he's trying to pay attention to what's happening on the street and trying to go around it. And he's looking at me and he's like, what? I was like, pretty sure I just had my first contraction. I was like, just take me home. As the contraction was over, and it wasn't like, oh, I think it was a contraction. I was like, no, this was I could not talk through it. I started sweating. There's nail marks in my seat. So I call my doula. I call Anna Paula, and I say, hey. So I had my first contraction, and I think it's game time, and I'm going to go home and sort of follow our plan. And our plan was light candles, take a bath, have a glass of wine, relax, put on music. And so she says to me, quick question, how bad was the contraction? And I said, it was bad. And as I'm saying it was bad, I have another one on the phone with her. And as soon as it's over, she says, okay, do me a favor, don't go home. Go to the hospital. And I was like, but I'm so close to being home. Let me just go take a shower. I have a plan. I have a dress I want to put on. I want to grab my bag. I want to wash my face. She's like, no, go to the hospital. I'm like, fine, hang up. Did not listen to her. So go home. As I'm getting into the house, I have another contraction. As I'm having one, I open the door and I scream. My husband comes running down. He's like, what? I was like, get the bag. It's go time. No. And he was like, well, he kind of got completely lost. He's like, okay. So grabbed his bag, not my bag. And I was like, there was a lot of cursing happening. And so finally we get in the car. I have another contraction. And so now they're coming quite frequent and they're really intense. I mean, there's no buildup. It's getting hit on the head with a hammer. Ooh. And they're really, really intense and really painful. But then when they're over, you're kind of okay. And you're like, oh my God, this is insane. And then they come again. So in the car, I lived really close to Cedars. So it took us maybe in that hour, 10 minutes. But I had a few in the car, and I remember pulling into the garage. I was like, if I have another one in the car, I'm going to die. So like he pulls in, and the garage was like, it wasn't closed, but there was like no valet. So he's like, I need to park. So I jump out of the car, and I'm standing by the elevators, and he goes to park. And so another one comes, and I get on my knees. I like get on all fours, and I'm breathing through it. And then I lift my head, and he's walking towards me. Not running, walking, like slowly walking. So I look up, and I'm like, what the thing is wrong with you? Like, this baby's coming. As I'm yelling and cursing at him, I turn around, and there's like 4 pregnant women standing behind me. I guess they just came out of like a class or something. So I was like, this is going to be you. This is going to happen to you. Get ready. It's terrible. So they're like mortified. And he's like, okay, stop talking. Get in the elevator. So then he takes me to the wrong floor.
Oh, no.
And I'm just I think I had another one in the elevator. We get to the 3rd floor, and I throw myself onto the table of the reception, and I was like, I'm having a baby. And she's like, okay, calm down. Like, is this your first child? I'm like, it's coming. And she's like, okay, we're going to get you into triage. I was like, listen, this baby's coming. So then I have like 2 in front of her, and she's like, oh, they're close. Okay, get her in a room.
Yeah,
So
they must be just a couple minutes apart.
it was
If you have a few in the car, you're so
fast
close.
and furious. And so I go into the room, and they check, and they're like, you're 9 centimeters dilated. Get her doctor here now.
Whoa.
Like, you're gonna be pushing soon. And then is when it got really intense. Like, I thought it was intense in like the car and like the garage, but it got really intense when I was in the room. And
Can I ask you a question? When they checked you, did you have an idea of how dilated you thought you might be?
I thought I must be in transition because of the amount of pain I was in. You know, it was so intense, and I wasn't really timing my contractions, but they seemed longer than.
Like they were lasting a long time.
But I would say a minute.
Yeah.
But again, when you're in pain, a minute,
just a
2
couple
minutes,
minutes
30
apart.
seconds. I don't know.
But it
So-
only been like an hour.
It's only it was an hour of labor, and so I started throwing up from the pain, and I remember it. So I remember exactly. It was like I threw up once, and my mom told me that when she was in labor with me, she's like, I threw up 3 times. My water broke, and I had you. Well, guess what? I threw up 3 times. On the 3rd time that I threw up, my water broke. And Dr. Goldberg came in at that moment. And I looked at Anna Paula and I said, if I have to go through one more contraction, I'm just going to die. And she was like, okay. So she's like, I hear this a lot. And that means you're probably ready to push. And at that moment, he came in and he's like, it's go time. I pushed 3 times. I pushed twice, and then her like head was out. And then I was like, I feel her head there. I'm going to push. And he was like, you can't push. Like, wait till the contraction. Like, listen to your body. And I was like, no, I'm going to push now. And so I tried to push, not during contraction. And my husband's like, you looked so silly because you were trying so hard, but nothing happened. Like, she didn't move. And he's like, yeah, I told you, like, wait. And I was like, oh, fine. So then the contraction came, and I remember I kept warning people. I'm like, there's one coming, like, because you would feel it. I was like, it's coming. And then it would happen, and I would scream. And so 3rd push, she came out. And then she was 9 pounds, and they, like, put her on me. And within seconds, she latched on. And I was like, there wasn't, because it happened so fast, there wasn't, like, it wasn't peaceful. Like, there wasn't like, oh my God, my baby. I think I started cracking up and saying, oh my God, she's so fat. And then after it was, I bled out a lot, and I had stitches. It was just this like really, like, I was shocked, and it was slightly unpleasant. And then I had stitches, and then I bled out, and there was a lot happening right after. It wasn't until hours later that they brought me into my room with her that I was like, I'm a mom. And I started like crying. But at first there wasn't that like, oh my God, my baby. It was like, haha, she's fat. Oh my God, I'm bleeding. Oh my God, I have stitches. What's happening? And there's a lot of people because my blood pressure went up. So they were all concerned. But it was under 2 hours. And
it's your first baby.
And it was my first.
Yeah.
So I don't.
How? Because you have friends that had babies around the same time with you. On average, how long were their labors?
Well, Sarah's was 20-something hours. And Casey had a baby after me. Hers was 8 hours. And then everyone else I knew was like 12, 17. A lot of friends of mine were like a full day. Some friends were like, we went to the hospital and then we went to sleep. I'm like, you went to sleep? Like, we woke up and then I was like, what?
Like, I wish.
Like,
For a walk, had some
no.
sushi. Yeah.
So it was definitely really intense. And listen, I don't know how longer labor is. I've never been through it. But in my plan, there was something really nice about, the beginning stages of labor. They're like minutes apart and you could take a bath or a shower and like be with your husband and kind of mentally get ready for it and emotionally prepare. And also something physically happens where like your body's like releasing the right chemicals and it's like it's building up. But when it happens like that, I feel like your body's like, what just happened? And then it's just go time. And it's almost like my body was trying to catch up with the whole like it was happening. Obviously my body was doing it, or maybe my mind was trying to catch up to what was actually happening.
Now, also, I guess what's interesting to say is did you see Dr. Goldberg that morning?
Well, I saw him that afternoon, and he was like, oh, I'm seeing you in like 2 hours for the podcast. And I was like, yeah.
Did he check your cervix at that appointment?
He did.
Do you know? Because you were already like pretty far along without
It was
having
weird.
had
I was
contractions.
dilating like without feeling any contractions or anything. I was, I think, like 4, but he kept saying, because I was 4 3 weeks before I had the baby. And he's like, I've never seen anything like this. Like, have you ever had any surgery? Well, what I remembered way after I had her is that I had a LEEP. And my doctor said that that's probably why you were so dilated, because the LEEP is on your cervix. And
A LEEP is to like freeze off.
it's like where they
cells.
So they said that might have been why I was so dilated.
I've seen a lot of abnormal or unusual things happen with women who have a history of LEEP, actually. They go from, the typical scenario is no labor, we're waiting, they're closed, and then all of a sudden it just very quickly will happen. So when it's time, it goes. So,
Yeah.
But in your case, it is a little unusual that you were already dilated and nothing was happening. And
Right.
then all of a sudden
walking around
it did.
at 4 centimeters.
Right.
Yeah.
Walking, I like literally when I would tell people like, oh, I'm 4 centimeters, they were like, get out of, like, go away. Like, your
what?
baby's going to drop out any minute. I was like, no, I there's nothing. And also she was really high. So like, even though I was dilated, the baby's really high up. So he was like, she's still pretty high. And I was like, can't you just like push her down a little bit? He's like,
No.
not how it
No,
works.
that's usually your job.
Yeah.
Do you sometimes see the post LEEP the opposite happen, where the cervix doesn't really want to dilate?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It won't for a long time, and then when it decides to, it will.
It just
They'll-
booms.
It just boom. It tends to just be we're waiting. People start thinking that's not going to happen, and then it does, and it goes very quickly.
Oh, that's
That's
interesting.
the experience I've had.
But your
After
mother
that.
also had precipitous labor, right?
With her second, though.
Oh,
So
okay.
with her first, it was 8 hours with her first, and then with me, it was under 2 hours, and it was so similar. Like, she was like, I threw up 3 times. Third time I threw up, my water broke, and then I had you like minutes later, and it was exactly what happened with me.
So
And
your birth was a lot like your birth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was like
If
identical.
I could say that.
And I also remember so well when my water broke, I looked at the nurse in the room and I said, because my friend told me, I said, I heard that when your water breaks, it gets worse. It gets more painful. I said, true or false? And she looked at me, she's like, and I felt like she didn't really want to say true, but she was like, well, and I remember looking at her being like, oh, and then another one came and I dived, because the whole time I was in labor, I was actually standing. And then every time that a contraction would come, I would dive into the pillow and like moan into the pillow. And for me, it was really nice because then when the contractions were over, I would stand again and do like my hula hoop motions and try to move my body. And I remember Anna Paula being like, "That's right, like move your body." I was like, I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And then another contraction would come and I'd like dive into the pillow. But it was always my plan to not have any medication or pain control or anything. So it was great. I don't think I would even have time for that.
It doesn't sound like you would have had time.
Yeah, but
really. Or, by the time that it starts to kick in, your baby probably would have been out.
I think in terms of that, I think I'm just more scared of a needle going into my spine than I am of pain. Yeah. I'd rather just deal with the pain and also with all the research I've done. That's what I wanted.
I know that you have a high pain tolerance.
Do you?
Yeah, 'cause I test it all the time. But then it's interesting because you said I assumed I was in transition because the pain was so intense. And, if I say the pain's so intense, I'm just a wimpy guy. So, that's probably not a whole lot of pain. But when you say the pain's intense, I know that means things are really strong.
I mean, I think the pain has to be intense if you start to throw up from it. Like
Yeah.
I threw
From
up
the
from
pain.
the pain. I wasn't nauseous. I was throwing up from the pain. And by the way, let me just say this. I would do it again. If someone told me, like, you're pregnant and it's guaranteed you're going to have a fast labor, like, do you want to go to the hospital early, get an epidural? I'd say, no, maybe I'll go to the hospital early, but I will do it exactly the same way because it was magical. As awful as it was at points, the end result and how I felt and how I wouldn't change it for anything.
Yeah, I mean, as a doula and body worker, I've seen a lot of people go through labor, a lot of women go through labor, and it seems like labor does get to that intensity for most people, but like you said, you have a chance to get used to it. You have a chance for your body to sort of ease into it, have contractions that are longer and shorter and spaced apart longer, and they're not so intense. And as you get used to it, it kind of kicks in more oxytocin, less adrenaline, and just kicks in to a deeper phase. Lilit, you're also a childbirth educator in addition to being a labor and delivery nurse and now almost a midwife. What do you tell people in labor and delivery? I mean, let me ask you this question. Do you have an idea of what an average first birth, how long it takes from the time labor starts till the baby's out?
Well, it is different for every woman, so we can't, say exactly. And if you look at the old studies where you would use the Friedman criteria, and we know that's outdated now.
Well, once you mention it, it's like a curve of how much labor we expect over a given period of time.
Yeah, he anticipated that once you were in active labor, your cervix would change or would need to change at least 1 centimeter per hour. And if it wasn't doing that, then something was wrong and things needed to be speeded up. We know that that's not necessarily true. It can take
1 centimeter an hour.
Half a centimeter an hour is a little more realistic. So it is reasonable to say that for a first-time mom, that first stage of labor, that latent phase before you get to 6 centimeters or 4 centimeters, it can take hours. It can take 20 hours for some people. It's just really slow. And what I tell people in my childbirth education classes, you're having a contraction every 30 to 40 minutes, let's say, when it first starts. So these women will say, I was in labor for 2 days. It's kind of false in the sense of the first 12 hours, you only really had, 20 contractions. So it's not that many.
Right.
And I try to get them to realize it in practical terms. But yeah, once it picks up and you do go into active labor, anywhere between, 5 to 10 hours is a normal. I'm just guessing. It's just kind of like a number I'm throwing out there.
So 2's pretty
So
quick.
2 is very, very quick.
Especially for a first
yes,
baby.
for our first baby. So on average, 12 to 20 hours is a normal first-time mom. I wouldn't be surprised.
What you can't see on the podcast is that Lilit is pretty pregnant right now.
Yeah, I'm doing about 2 weeks.
You're doing 2 weeks. Wow. And so if you get up and start grunting, we know what's happening later tonight. You're doing a couple of weeks, and also this is baby number 3 for you.
Yes.
We're going to take a little break, but when we come back, I want to find out how your first couple of births went, and then also get more information from you about when somebody's in labor, how can they sort of benchmark where they are and how fast things are progressing. Join us right here on the Informed Pregnancy Podcast. We're just going to take a very quick break. If you're looking for the perfect baby or toddler gift, you've got to check out My First Year's online collection of clothing, toys, accessories, and more. Every adorable item can be personalized with the child's name for no additional cost. Get the perfect gift for any child in your life at My First Year's, your go-to source for events and occasions such as baby showers, birthdays, and holidays. There are so many great options to choose from, you're definitely going to find a special gift that any child will love and cherish throughout their life. Every child should have something from My First Year's in their wardrobe. Even the royal family, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, have My First Year's in their closet. And now, for a limited time, you save 10% off your first order using promo code BERLIN, BERLIN, when you check out. Visit them at myfirstyears.com. That's myfirstyears using the number 1st.com. My First Year's personalized gifts made with love, made simple. If you love our podcast and want even more, check out my friend Adriana Losata at the Birthful Podcast. Adriana is a birth doula, postpartum educator, author, and sought-after speaker. Every week, Adriana adds another information-packed episode where she interviews pregnancy, birth, and postpartum experts, adding to her impressive library of over 100 episodes to date. The Birthful Podcast delivers well-researched, evidence-based information so you can make the choices that best fit you and your family for pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. For more information, check out the Birthful Podcast or visit birthful.com. That's BIRTHFUL.com. Welcome back to the Informed Pregnancy and Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Elliot Berlin. Today's co-host, Angelica Ortiz, and our guests, Anna Anisimova, Schafer, and Lilit Sarkissian. Welcome back. So, Lilit, you're very pregnant right now. And you already have 2 kids. How are your labors and delivery?
I would say my first one was sort of typical, and the second one very atypical.
Were you already working L&D with your first?
Yes, I was.
You were.
I was, I believe, working there for about 3 years at the time already, and now 6, I guess, because my first one's 3. She's going to turn 3 this upcoming Monday.
Oh, wow. It's been a busy couple of years for you.
Yeah. Yes. So with my first baby, I remember being pregnant and my nursing friends asking me, well, what type of labor do you want? And I would always tell them that, in an ideal world, I want uninterrupted, just easy labor, fast, ideally. But whatever happens, I would tell them that I want to get to the hospital when I'm 9 centimeters. And then just, because I didn't want a lot of interventions, and that's how you would prevent a lot of interventions, is if you get there when it's almost time to birth. And we would laugh and say, that's nice. That's going to happen. But that's actually what ended up happening with my first baby. So around midnight, I started having contractions, and my husband slept through them all the way until 7 a.m. I was really uncomfortable. I kept getting up and going to the bathroom, and I'd lost my mucus plug about 2 days before that. And at around 7 a.m. in the morning, I woke him up and I said, I can't sit or lay down anymore. We need to go for a walk. And he said, oh, okay. Are you punishing me, waking me up this early in the morning because I was sleeping? I said, no, I didn't need you at that time, but I need you now. We need to go for a walk. So we proceeded to go for about 1.5 miles. And we're walking towards one of my nursing friends' homes because in my head, she's going to be home. And she's going to check me and tell me how far along I am, because I don't want to go to the hospital too early. That was my big thing. I don't want to go when I'm 2 centimeters. So we get there and my friend's not home. Oh. And so we proceed to walk back. But the whole time that we're walking, every 2 to 3 minutes, I'm getting a contraction. They're very regular. I stop in the middle of the road, breathe through them, keep walking. Breathe through them, keep walking. And I threw up once at home. I threw up a second time in the middle of the street when all of this was happening.
Oh, no.
On our way back, my husband decided that he wanted to have a bagel. And so we go into this bagel shop, and I very badly wanted to eat something because I haven't eaten anything all night.
And you've been throwing up.
Yeah, but I want to eat, but my body is saying no. And that's one of the signs that you would know you're in labor, because you're not going to be hungry. Your body's not getting those signals of, I want a grilled cheese sandwich, you know?
When you're in active labor.
When you're in active labor, the last thing you want to do is eat. So, yeah, I was like, I can't eat anything. I went to the bathroom.
But when your wife is in active labor, that's a great time for
Bagel
a bagel.
time.
Bagel time. So there was a lady I remember there who asked me, when's your due date? And I was like, 4 days ago. I'm thinking in my head, I'm having a baby today. And I remember in retrospect telling the story to my friends, and I was like, why did she ask me that? Didn't she see I was laboring? And she's like, no, because why would you be at a bagel shop?
Yeah,
you were going to
true.
have a baby.
In active labor.
You should be at the hospital. Anyway, we got home. One of my other nursing friends did meet up with me at home, and she checked me and she said, Lilit, you're 7 centimeters. You have a bulging bag, which is like your bag of waters can break soon. You should go to the hospital. And like Anna, my husband grabbed a bunch of things and threw them in a trash bag. And they were a bunch of socks. And that's it, really. And we had no other change of clothes. And the whole time we were driving to the hospital, we thought, oh, my gosh, maybe I'm going to have the baby in the car. But when I got to the hospital, my doctor met me there, and he said I was 9 centimeters.
Oh, wow.
Exactly what I wanted to happen. Yeah. The baby was still high. My water wasn't broken. And I knew that if your water breaks, you're going to have more painful contractions. Yeah. That is true. Your nurse should have said yes.
Well, she wanted to say yes, but she could tell that if she said yes, I potentially would punch her.
Yeah.
So she was afraid to say yes.
This is true. And so Dr. Chin asked me, well, do you want me to break your bag of water? Because you're uncomfortable. And if I do that, you're already so far along. You'll just, have the baby soon. I said no. Because I thought I can't deal with the contractions even stronger than this. But I labored for about an hour like that. And he rechecked me and I was still 9. So I said, fine, break the bag of water. He broke the bag of water, and I was so scared to push with my first baby that I thought I was going to tear. I just, labored like that for another hour, and I had no urge to push. I was just like, no. And then finally I got over it. I pushed for about 30 minutes, and she was born, and it was fine.
Wow.
So that was my first labor, and it was...
I think that's the one that people really want.
Yeah,
that's the
one they want. They don't want the 2 hour.
Yeah.
They think they want the 2 hour, but they like that little build up with a little donut, a bagel shop stop.
Yeah. Did your contractions begin like really intensely also? Like during
I had contractions the night before, and then they went away. And that's why my husband slept that night, too, because he thought the same thing was going to happen. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, they kind of slowly started. But once they started, they were I was using an app on my phone, every 4 to 5 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes. And then it just kind of stayed like that.
Okay,
and then
so
never
yours was
went
more gradual.
Away. Yeah, it was gradual, but that intense transition, I think, that Anna was talking about, where you really move from 8 to 10 centimeters, I was probably feeling that in the car and at the hospital, but it didn't. Just felt more continuous and gradual building up. And you're used to it because it's a slow buildup.
Right.
Yes. So
right.
that is true. And your body is designed to deal with labor. So, more oxytocin, more
I feel like my body had no time
hormone.
to there was no. I was like, where was oxytocin? Like, it's not there. It's not building. But by the time it was to put, the adrenaline. What I didn't say is the pushing didn't hurt.
Yeah,
it did not hurt. I felt pressure, but I feel like there's so much adrenaline that's like the least painful part. And I tore, and it still didn't hurt.
Yeah. Do a lot of people say that?
You're like, no.
Well, I would also say that it's this precipitous labor, or when women come in and they're completely unmedicated, just all natural at the hospital. I feel like that doesn't happen a lot. And so you don't necessarily get to see it, at least not at Cedars, because we have a higher epidural rate than Well, I think it's the same everywhere. But and I wish that's one of the things that I would do, because I work in labor and delivery. The baby's born, and about 2 hours later, we transfer them to postpartum. So when they're reflecting on their birth stories and how they felt, as you said, it was a couple hours later, I don't get to hear that part, you know? So at that very moment, they might not say that because they're so in shock and they're enamored by their baby and so many other things are going on. They're not like, oh, that didn't hurt. Yeah. So, you know, but your body has natural endorphins, you know, that make you feel good as labor is happening. So I think there's a truth to that. Yeah.
How was your second birth experience?
My second birth was very different. So I went 8 days past my due date with my second baby.
Ooh, even longer.
And my doctor kept wanting to check me, and I said, no, the baby will come when it comes. And I thought it was going to be very similar to the first one, because I kept saying, oh, it doesn't matter. With the first baby, I didn't have an urge to push. I was so scared to push. You know, I had to get into that mindset. The same thing's going to happen with the second one. So I said, even if I have a fast labor, I'll still make it to the hospital in time to push the baby. Well, it was very different. So my contractions started around 11 p.m., maybe like closer to midnight, actually. And I labored in the bathroom for a little bit, took a shower, which I didn't get to do with my first baby. So it's like, let me do that with this one. They kind of went away, but I don't think the shower really helped me. I got out of the shower and they kind of sort of stopped. But before that, they were every 2 to 3 minutes, very intense. And I remember texting my cousin saying, it's going to happen tonight. I just don't know when. And that was the last text message that I sent to them. But I wasn't telling them, come, you know, they were my doulas, my last birth, or meet me somewhere. So I still thought that I had a lot of time. And when I called one of our nurses to give her heads up that I was most likely going to come to the hospital that night, and I talked to her over the phone, she said, you know, you don't really sound like you're in labor right now. And I said, I feel the same way. So we hung up and my husband said, let's just go to the hospital. Why can't you just labor in the hospital? And I said, no, it's not time. Too early. And after I said that, about 15 minutes later, I started having very intense contractions for about an hour. I had to breathe through them. It was very painful. I'm leaning over. They're taking over me. I cannot talk through them. They're very, very intense. And so about an hour of that, I start thinking, maybe I should go to the hospital now.
It's time.
And my body starts doing this natural shaking thing that you will see a lot of women do right before they're about to have a baby. They don't really know why that happens. Everybody's always like, oh, she's cold, but it's not. It's just, I believe that there's a change in the hormones and your legs and thighs kind of just uncontrollably shake.
It sometimes looks like a seizure.
Yeah, it did happen to me.
Yeah. So that is a very typical sign of she's about to have a baby. Shivering. And so that started happening to me. And that's when I called my friend back and I said, it's happening. And you could tell in my tone of voice that I should have already been at the hospital at this point, but now it's too late. So we're in our apartment. I'm trying to scramble and leave. But the contractions are like every 2 to 3 minutes. They're very intense. They're about 1.5 minutes long. And I get to the bathroom, you know, use the restroom again. I have another contraction. Wash my hands, have another contraction. Go to the living room, have another contraction. Wow. Get to the door, have another contraction. Like, it's taking me 5 or 6 contractions over the course of 20 minutes to actually leave the house.
Oh, wow.
And so we get to the car. This time we had a bag packed and in the car ready to go. And as one of my legs is about to, I'm thinking, how am I going to sit through a 20-minute car ride? I'm so uncomfortable. But as I'm about to sit in the car, has not happened yet, I tell my husband, go get some towels, because if my water breaks, I should be sitting on towels. That's what I was sitting on last time. So as he comes out with towels, I yell, ah, like really loud, my water just broke.
Oh, wow.
Oh, no.
And I'm wearing this long skirt and it's all wet. And I look at him, I'm like, do I have to change? And he goes, get in the car. So I sit on the towels that he brought in the car. And he proceeds to drive. He's driving very quickly on the freeway. We live in Sherman Oaks.
Wait, no bagel?
No bagel this
Okay.
time. Although
What?
he did have some pudding with him.
No kidding.
That as he's driving, he thought that he was going to snack on, and I was like, throw that out. So, yeah, he did have some food with
There's
him.
always room for Jell-O and pudding.
Yeah, no, I made him get rid of it. And then he said, I knew Lilit was really in labor because she didn't care that I littered and threw that outside the window. Because normally I would have killed him for doing that. But yeah, he gets on the freeway. He's trying to call my friend Haley, who's the nurse at Cedars, we've been in contact with, back. And on the freeway, he's trying to make this phone call and he's driving super fast. It is, at this point, my water broke at 2:55 a.m. And he exits Wilshire. The whole time my eyes are closed and I am going, I'm just trying so hard not to push as I'm having a contraction because I feel like this baby is just going to come. There's just so much pressure, which is very different from my first labor because I was so scared. I didn't have an urge to push. And this time it was just uncontrollable. And so finally he exits. I open my eyes and I'm like, okay, we're on Wilshire. And I remember thinking, if he goes left, we can make it to UCLA. But he keeps going down Wilshire, passes Westwood. And Haley's on the phone and she keeps saying, just keep driving. Come to the hospital. And she has a team downstairs. The doc is there and 2 other nurses are there. They're waiting for us to get there. And I'm telling him, pull over, it's going to come out. And he's just, is like, doesn't know who to listen to. And eventually I tell him, like, just pull over. Like, he's just, I won. He pulled over to the side of the road. We don't really know exactly where, but it passed Westwood and before the next big street. It's 3 a.m. in the morning and there's no one on the road. And it's Wilshire Boulevard. And, I remember putting my hand down and feeling like, okay, this baby's crowning. Like, there's a head there. Oh. And so he comes around, and for some reason, we had sterile gloves in the car because I work in labor and delivery. We also had a cord clamp, but he wasn't able to find that before we left the house. So he's trying to put on these gloves. He thinks he has time. And so one of my legs is up on the dashboard, and the car, I told him to lower the seat. And he saw like a little bit ahead, so he thought, oh no, we're going to make it in time to go to the hospital. So he proceeds to just go right back and sit in his driver's seat. And as his hand is on the, what's that stick to like move it from drive to...
the gear selector.
The gear selector from park to drive. I say, I think the head's about to come out. And he turns around, gets back out of the car, and he comes around. And I wish you could see me doing this, but he says, and I see this. So there's a head between my legs.
Oh, my goodness.
He no longer cares about the gloves. He just is ready to deliver the rest of the baby. And I don't tell him that I'm about to have another contraction. I just push, and the baby comes out, and he barely is able to catch the baby.
Wow.
And he's heard me talk so much at work and about skin to skin and what to do with the baby right afterwards. He just like took the baby and just put her on my chest and then quickly ran to sit in the car and keep driving, you know? He's like, okay, baby's here. And so he's driving and we don't know the sex of the baby. We didn't know the first one. We didn't know this one. We had a girl and I said, well, what did we have? And he turned around and he said, who gives up? I was like, what do you mean? So I proceed to lift the baby up and I'm like, oh, it's a girl. And as he had like placed her on me, there was a little bit of like cord wrapped around her neck. I don't think it was a nucleus. I think it was the way she came out and how he placed her on me. I like grabbed the towel. I'm stimulating her. Haley's on the phone on speaker and she's like, Lilit, I don't hear the baby crying. Put your hands on the umbilical cord. Is there pulsating? And I'm just like, oh, the baby has good tone. It'll cry soon. I'm just very calm and collected. Never thought that something was going to happen or something wrong might, something may go wrong. And so, yeah, I just,
It's interesting. Pretty much everybody who I know who had a car birth, none of whom were planning to have a car birth.
Yeah, you don't ever want that.
When you hear about it in retrospect, it sounds like such a terrifying moment in pre-spec, like, oh, I don't want that. But actually, everybody who had a car birth that I know of had kind of a calm experience. It's a little crazy just circumstantially. But in terms of the actual birth, there's not a whole lot of like lead up or fear or...
No.
No.
He said he felt he had a moment of fear, my husband.
Your
and
husband
that,
did.
And that he very quickly pushed that idea out of his head because he's like, I don't want that to take over me. And then, he was very calm, collected, and,
And then you went to the hospital.
I proceeded to give him directions on how to get to the hospital.
You were also ways. So I want to ask these questions because there are certain benchmarks in labor, right? That if you've never been in labor or watched people go through labor, you may not know about them, but you can share them with our audience. And we want, what are some of the signs that you're in early labor? What are some of the signs that now you've entered active labor? Mm-hmm. When's a good time to go to the hospital? And how do you know when you're ready to push if you're not doing cervical checks? What are other things to sort of get you through those four?
For the typical mom, and you would think that I would know all those signs for my own labor, but I missed them all both times. A lot of what Anna actually talked about are signs that you're going to see, just in her case that they happen very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. But if you're not checking the cervix, most of the time don't need to check someone's cervix. You could just tell from looking at a woman kind of where she is. You're not exact, but you have a good guess.
Or listening to her.
Yeah, or listening to her. So her behavior and how she is dealing and coping with those contractions changes. She will go from being able to talk through them, which you were at a podcast and talking through them. You were probably having early contractions, but just didn't feel them. Your pain tolerance is so high. Right. But yeah, she can talk through them, and then she may have to pause and stop and actually go through the contraction without interruption. And then when she gets towards the end of labor, her physique kind of and the way she deals with the contraction and has to cope through it is very different. So she wants everyone around her to not talk during a contraction and just has to maybe close her eyes or do some rhythmic thing where she has to breathe through the contraction, and the breathing is key. But you could tell that it goes from being able to converse during a contraction to I have to now focus on my breathing, take in a deep breath, blow it out, deep breath, blow it out. So that's different. Also, her body posture kind of will change. So you go from being in an upright position to kind of, as your contractions get more intense, leaning over on a table or a bed or whatever that you may grab onto and just kind of swaying, to when the baby is about to come, you will see women naturally get closer to the ground, as Anna described.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a physiological thing behind that, but you don't want the baby to drop from 3 feet onto the ground. So maybe you're getting closer to the ground so there's less injury to baby. I don't know what the anthropological...
I have a couple of moms, when they're ready to push, they just drop wherever they are. Mm-hmm. And they could be just in the middle of the floor. They will drop and finish labor there and push the baby out right there.
Yeah. Wow. So that's really close. You're it's about to happen. I don't need to check someone to be oh yeah, she's completely dilated. Yeah. When she's on all fours, kind of grunting and is making sounds like that as she's having a contraction, it can lead. That's a good sign. So what her body is doing. Also, bloody show. So kind of red discharge. Generally will happen because your cervix has a lot of blood vessels in the area, and as it dilates and opens, blood vessels break, and women will see when they go to the bathroom, they'll wipe and it'll be just kind of like a glob of red blood. But it's not a lot. She's not bleeding. It's just kind of oh, I saw that. So bloody show, generally maybe somewhere between 4 to 6 centimeters or 6 to 8. That's another sign of cervical change. So that's a clue for us. The uncontrollable shaking happens at the end. So that's the last kind of key. And then, as Anna kind of described, she said she looked to the nurse or to Anna Paula and said, I feel like I will die if I have another contraction. Yes. There's this dooming feeling or this emotion that they feel, and whoever's closest to them that's providing the labor support is just a very intense eye connecting moment where they're kind of grabbing onto you and saying, stay with me, I need you, because if you're not here, I feel like I'm gonna die. So exactly how she described it, you will see a woman do that in transition. So that's a clue. And yeah, just from their facial expression. And, you know, the general, your contraction pattern is getting stronger, closer together, more regular. It's not letting go, though that's a key sign of it's going to happen. And I will tell women to stay at home just because they've had regular contractions, 5 minutes apart, getting regular, even for 2 hours if you've had that. Because we say if you've had that for 2 hours, come to the hospital. You may be doing that for 6 hours. You know, and you're still maybe in early labor, the early active phase. So I say when you feel like you are getting to a point where you will be uncomfortable sitting in a car, which is what you described, before you get to that point or when you're there, come to the hospital.
Learn your lesson.
Before your water breaks, hopefully.
I see sometimes during labor, though, earlier, though, that sort of shaking come not to the same extent. It's almost like they get a little more shaky, then throw up, and then it goes away.
Right.
And then it comes back maybe a few hours later, shaky, throw up, and then it goes away. But that one at the end is like, it's like big.
Very intense.
The first time I saw it looked like, I thought, does anybody else see that she's having a seizure? And they're like, oh no, that's normal.
Yeah.
You know, I think
and then
sometimes
just
partners
pressure. A lot of women will say, I feel increased pressure as the baby comes down.
Having to use the
pressure, I
restroom.
felt it in my back.
Yeah.
Like it was like lower back, like into my butt. It just felt. I was like, it's just didn't explode. It felt like that my skin is going to come apart and there was going to be an explosion.
Right before you pushed?
Right before I pushed.
And my husband, I remember him telling, like, can you just hold it? And I'm like, it's not like that. You can't hold it. This is uncontrollable.
Right. Like if you have to pee, can you just hold it for a little bit?
Yeah.
So a precipitous labor sounds pretty like heaven sent. What are some risks of a precipitous labor? Did you tear also with either of your births? Or?
No. My biggest fear did not come true. And no, I did not tear. But that can happen. As, you know, especially for a first-time mom, you want to allow the tissue to have time to stretch.
Right.
And that is what first-time babies will do. And it's typical for moms to push anywhere between 30 minutes to 2 hours, and that's normal. And a lot of that is, you know.
Not my 4 minutes of pushing.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, like you said, that's probably why I tore, because it was so...
That won't be the only reason, but it's definitely a contributing factor. Right. I think genetics and your skin and
9-pound baby
and the birth weight and the position. There's so many things that can play a role in why women would tear. Specifically, also, I think the position women push in, I think that has a big factor. But
can I ask or in your experience, what's the position that you like never see, or barely ever see a tear? Like, what is the best position for a non-tear, in your opinion?
In my personal opinion, the research on this is a little varied, but upright positions tend to, you know, like squatting. Yeah.
Tends to lead to less tearing?
Yeah. The lithotomy position is the worst one.
Laying on your back.
Laying on your back.
With your legs up in the air.
Yeah, that one's going to cause the most tearing.
Right. But everyone's different. And also, like, I think sometimes, like, you didn't have your chance for oxytocin to really kick in, but I think it seems like when you get to that more oxytocin-induced state, that everything just becomes a little bit more elastic.
Yeah.
And so...
I was in a lithotomy position pushing for my first baby, and I didn't tear. So you can't say that that's the...
Right.
That is the reason. There's so many other factors.
It's funny because right before we pushed, it was... Because I had all these ideas of, like, what position I would be in, and I went from standing to, like, you know, falling over my pillow during contractions. I went into a squat, and it was the worst contraction of my life. Like, I was like, it was awful. I just remember being like, this is not how it's gonna happen. Like, I need to. And Paul's like, try to get on all fours. Did that, had a contraction like that, and I was like, no, like this is like I still. And I was like, I think I just want to lay down. Like, I just want to lay down. And that's when I lay down. And what was so great is when Goldberg came in last minute, like, ready to push.
That's his thing.
What was kind of cool, though, is I had a plan that I had a labor plan, a birth plan. And he walked in there and he was like, ready to push. Are you good? This is the position you want to be in? I'm like, yeah. And they, like, were pulling out the stir. And he's like, she doesn't want those. And I was like, well, you read my birth? Like, he read it. Because it was, like, one of my things. I don't want the stirrups. I want, like, my husband held one leg and Anna Paula held the other one.
He does read it.
He does, and he like knew, and then
important to
he
him.
knew. Well, when the baby came out, he knew that like I didn't want anyone to touch the baby, and that I wanted it to pulsate the cord. So like he knew everything that was like he didn't have to look. He didn't have to like look at his notes. Like he knew. And I don't think he had time to go over the notes before he got in there.
He just knew.
But he knew. Well, that was awesome.
Good
And
for
I
him.
think I encourage people to sort of, because you don't know how fast it's going to go. And you don't know if you're, having this crazy fast labor. You're not going to be like, I want this, I want that. Like, write it out and just give it to your doctor or whoever, your husband. I think it's nice to sort of have
an idea, but then also be open to that. It might not play out
But
that
by
way.
the way, at the very end, I had this whole thing of like, I want to do what's best for me and the baby. So like, I understand this could happen or that could happen. Like, so, but like, this is the general idea of like what I would, what I would want.
All right, guys. I want to thank you for all being here and sharing these great stories of precipitous labor, fast birth. Guess what? We're going to actually do another episode on prodromal labor. Which is
I
quite
can't
the
come
opposite.
to that one.
Well, hopefully this one won't be prodromal for you. No, but actually, I really want to have you back. You're chock full of information. And Angelica's a brand new doula. She just finished her training. And did one birth so far? Is that the one we did together? Mm-hmm. And then two? Oh, two, right. And she is taken off. And so, but for us as doulas, it's always nice to talk to you, labor and delivery, because you have the real 411 intel, and also it's good for women to know. The more I think sometimes that they have information, women and their partners, then we can gauge these things a little bit better. So hopefully you will come back and join us again, and also tell us how number 3 goes. Hopefully, who knows? If it's anything like Anna, it'll be after
pleasure.
some kind of armed robbery on your way home tonight.
45 minutes.
That was crazy.
I know. I have finals on the 15th. The baby's not coming until.
Oh,
after
okay.
that.
Well,
No.
we'll see.
During the finals.
No.
Right after the last
Guaranteed
question. And I also want to find out what the journey is like to becoming a nurse midwife. Anna, thank you for sharing your story and coming now the second time on our podcast.
Thanks for having
I want to have
me.
you back again anyway to talk about something else, but we'll save that for then. Yes. And everybody should check out Elizabeth Blue. I can't wait for, at the time of this recording, it's coming out in a few weeks, but
September. Oh, I can't say.
Can't say.
No.
But actually, by the time you hear this, it will be out. So check out Elizabeth Blue. And Angelica, thanks for joining us as always. Your insight is helpful, and I know you're thirsty for info now on your new journey to doulahood. And you always have valuable information because you do like crazy research. You're a good researcher. Yeah. You can check out Angelica's writings on our blog at informedpregnancy.com, where you'll also find our documentaries, this podcast, and our brand new series, The Real Midwives of Los Angeles. If you have any questions, write to us at info@informedpregnancy.com.